So this is a little reminder to tweet in your questions, and you can do that during the presentation. And also to remind you, it's hashtag MGT3550 at USU Clark Center. So you can do that during the presentation. We're really excited to have Robert Gardner with us. He's the founder and CEO of Grandeur Peak Global Advisors. His educational background, he comes from the University of Utah, where he received 2 bachelors, one in physics and one in mathematics. So I thought that was really cool. He started his career at Wasatch Advisors. So Robert is an acclaimed portfolio manager, and he's received many recognitions as such. But at Wasatch Advisors, he was a director and executive, and he helped grow that firm's assets under management from 20 million to 11 billion. So he's handled a lot of assets, and he's really helped small cap companies grow and investing in the right spots all around the world. We're really excited to have him. Also, just to mention, his wife Susie's here with his daughter Hannah, and we're glad that they're here with us. And he has 4 other children. Little background: he's an outdoor enthusiast, and he enjoys being a youth leader in his community. And let's give a warm welcome and a round of applause for Robert Gardner.
Okay, thanks, Clint. I'm grateful to have the opportunity to speak up here at Utah State and to share some of my life's experiences. I've never spoken on the topic of entrepreneurship, and I really haven't given it that much thought. It's just something that sort of happened in my life, and this is the first time I've ever given a talk on it. Mike Glauser, your executive director, asked me to do this, and I was really thrilled to do it. As Clint mentioned, I didn't go to Utah State, but I wanted to tell you how much I love this valley in Utah State. My middle name is Thatcher, and my pioneer heritage, Hezekiah and Allie Kitchen Thatcher and their family were successful entrepreneurs here in Logan. They started up some co-op stores, ranches, several mills, and a bank here. My great-great-grandmother, Emily McNeil Ballard, started a boarding house and a restaurant in Cass Junction where the railroad came in. And so the railroad workers and those travelers worked there, and she had a thriving business. My great-grandfather, Will Griffin, was a Republican state senator here when everybody were Democrats, and I've read some stories about him. My parents, in my college years, had a farm out in Mendon as well, west of here in Logan. And Susie and I, my wife and I, have just some wonderful memories out here. And so, even though I didn't come here, I really love this place. Susie and I, we have a painting. It's a Harrison Groudage, a famous Utah artist, a small little one of Logan. It's on our stairway, and we see it every day. And it's just, this is a beautiful valley, and I'm so pleased to be able to speak to you. And then, in addition, Susie and I finally have a daughter-in-law who is an Aggie. And so she regularly reminds us of that. This is her there, and we took her on the fishing trip a year and a half ago, and she showed us all up and caught the biggest fish. So there's something special about Aggies. I'm not going to talk that much about my company, but I'm just going to tell you about my life experience. And this may be super boring, and this will be the first time I've ever done it, and maybe the last time if that's the case. But I'm just going to tell you how I got to where I got, and I'm thinking that might be a little bit more interesting to you. I grew up a block from the University of Utah on 2nd Avenue in the thick of the college atmosphere. Sororities and fraternities were all around me. My 2 best friends' dads were the dean of the physics department, and the other a political science professor, and another one of my friends was the president of the University of Utah. In addition to growing up in this academic type of environment, my mother was very big on education. as I told you, she was a Thatcher with Cache Valley roots, and her father, my grandfather, got a PhD and was a professor of economics at the University of Wisconsin. While I don't ever remember my mom pushing me or scolding me to get good grades, I just somehow figured out that I needed to get good grades. I had 6 sisters that were like straight 4.0 students, elementary school, junior high, high school, college, and we'd had the boys, the 3, besides 6 sisters and then 3 brothers, that we kind of pulled the grade point down, but we weren't too bad. So academics were super important and part of my background. From my dad, I really learned to work. Every Saturday, I spent at least the morning working the yard with my dad, and sometimes it could be the whole day. I remember complaining about it once to him, and he simply said that if there was one thing he was going to teach me as his dad, it was going to be the value of hard work. The other thing that my dad did is he planted in our minds over the years the idea that we should own our business. He was a lawyer, and he used to tell us, own your own business, because as a lawyer, the minute you stop working, the meter stops running. And so if you own your own business, the meter can keep running and you can stop working. I'm still trying to figure that out. I'm in business and I'm an entrepreneur, but the meter doesn't stop. It doesn't keep running when I stop working. So my first experience started as a paper boy. Mike, were you ever a paper boy? He was. Okay, none of you understand it because you're all the internet. There's no newspapers. But when I was a kid, almost all of us had a paper route, and I learned a lot from that. If I missed somebody's house, or if I threw the paper on the roof or in the window well, I got a call and I had to go make it right. I learned if it snowed or it rained or it was cold, I still had to deliver the paper. If there were mean dogs, you got to figure your way around that one. If I was out of town, I had to find somebody to do it for me. And so I learned to do a good job. And, one of the things I learned is if you did a really good job, you could get a tip, too, at Christmas time. So that was helpful. So I had a paper out there right by the University of Utah, and my best friend had the one right next to it. His name's Eric Huffner. He's kind of followed me through all of this. After a few years, the paper route, Eric and I, after that, we moved on and got a job as a bagger. Mike, did you ever bag groceries anywhere? You didn't, okay. But that's what a lot of boys did, and so we were stock boys. I had a lawn mowing job. My older brother, John, who was someone I really looked up to, he was 6 years older than me, he started his own house painting business. And, that was thought-provoking for me to look up at my big brother kind of starting his own business. So I wanted to pause and just show you, here's my nephew, Oscar Smith. He's a little bit older than that now, but we were backpacking there. But here's his little business, worry-free house sitting. He's been a little entrepreneur in our neighborhood. My sister lives around the corner, and he'll do snow removal, walk the dog, and take care of people's houses when they go on vacation. Here's an example of his invoice. You can see how great he is. Dear Mrs. Beckstrand, here's the invoice for the house sitting job. He leaves his phone. You can text me. And so here's a budding little entrepreneur. And so I had a little bit of this in me, just a little creativity. And I thought I'd pass that on to you just to kind of get you thinking. Turning back to my story, a professor of finance named Sam Stewart lived on 3rd Avenue in my neighborhood. I lived on 2nd Avenue, and my friend Eric Huffner lived on 1st Avenue. Sam was part of Eric's paper route next to mine, and somehow Sam noticed the neighborhood boys from the paper routes in the local mom and pop grocery store bagging, and he knew our parents, and he was a professor at the University of Utah and had founded an asset management firm on the side to be an investment advisor. And in 1980-81, the firm was tiny, but it was up and running, and Sam needed help. And there were no PCs back then, okay? The IBM Microsoft brought the PC a few years later, and so I became really, really good. You know, he needed help in the back office, and he hired some young kids to come do it, the neighborhood kids. And so we went down, and this is what I did: is I number crunched with a 10 key. You know, yeah, I'm very good at a 10 key. I can add really fast with the 10 key. And we had this green ledger paper. You know, the data wasn't kept in the computers. It was on these pieces of paper. So that's how I started. And I mean, that just looks like a dinosaur, doesn't it? So Eric and I, through high school, worked part-time during the school year, catching the bus from East High School. And we would just catch the bus, go downtown, worked in the afternoons, and then in the summers, we worked closer to full-time. There were a handful of other kids like us hired over the years, and we affectionately called ourselves the support team. We took a lot of pride in our jobs. We went the extra mile when needed. I remember one New Year's Eve, we worked late because somehow a bunch of stuff had to be done. There was a mainframe computer across the street, and somehow we had to get the data in there before year end, and we worked late. We had a lot of unity as a team, and even created a newsletter for our own little support team as some of the team went off to college, and we'd tell them how Wasatch was doing, which was the name of the firm that Sam had founded. Sam was happy with our work. It was mostly back office kind of work, preparing quarterly reports and reconciling our clients' accounts with brokerage statements. We were especially excited, though, when we could work directly for Sam, helping him on research projects for stock picking rather than the back office. It was a great high school job, and I continued in the job my freshman year of college. We were proud to be part of Wasatch. We took pride in our support team and the work we did, and it was exciting to learn more about investing in the stock market. I became very good at knowing how to do compound returns and everything about the back-end operational issues of running an asset management investment advisory. Sam and Cindy Firestone, his head of operations, were a pleasure to work for. The pay wasn't anything amazing, but the learning experience and the working environment were amazing. Eric and I still found time to have enough fun. We were class officers. I got this question in the dinner before, but we were class officers. We played on sports teams. One of the things I did is I talked Cindy into giving me a work release so I could get out a little bit early from school, and I probably skied 30 or 40 times that year. Of course, she made me come down later that night and get my work done, but we had fun, we played hard, and we worked hard. In 1984, I left on a Mormon mission to France for 2 years. Having this global experience left a mark on me that I'll talk about later. Upon my return from France, I came back to ask for the job from Sam. I was thrilled when he said I could have the job back, and I was even more thrilled when I asked him if hey, could I work for you on the stock picking side rather than the back office grunt work operational side. And so I was a full-time student working on a double major in math and physics at the University of Utah, and I was working 3/4 time at Wasatch Advisors as a research analyst. At the same time, I pretty quickly met and fell in love with my wife, Susie, who's here. She's an English major there. We met kind of on the campus. We were engaged on October 2nd, 1987. You'll recall, for any history, finance buffs here, that Black Monday was October 19th, which was a couple of weeks later, 1987. And that day the market was down 23% in a single day. And I remember calling Susie at her work and saying, well, I hope I have a job tomorrow. Susie learned quickly about the stresses of working in the stock market. And she's had to learn a lot of patience. You know, when you're working the stock market, it's up and down, and there can be really hard days and really great days. But there's one thing, there's a lot of stress and there's a lot of volatility. 2 years later, we had a little baby, Maria, our oldest, and so life was pretty busy. It was full-time school, nearly full-time work, marriage, baby, and I also started a program called the Cfa Program, which was because I didn't have a business background. I was doing that to kind of help me with finance. While I had a super interesting, incredible job in college working as a stock picking research analyst at Wasatch, my plans were actually not to do anything in finance or business long run. Ever since I was a kid, I was good at math and science, and my parents told me that someday I'd be a great scientist. My plan was always to get a PhD in physics or electrical engineering and to be a scientist. If not that, I thought about medicine, and while at the U, I did every pre-med requirement as well. The stock market to me was just a fun college job. I had no plan to pursue it long run. In 1990, I was approached by one of the directors of research at Novell to do a summer internship. This is Wasatch Advisors. This is where I was working in high school. And this is Novell. I was approached that summer, right before my last year, by one of the director of research there. He's like the number 2 guy there. And nobody thinks much of Novell now, but back then it was like the Google today or the Apple. Novell was going toe-to-toe with Microsoft and was a big name on Wall Street, and it was super high-tech. What they did is they were the first ones to do network operating systems, so to hook up, to connect all the PCs. This was really the first company. It's based in Provo. Microsoft later kind of crushed them, but I had a chance to work there for the director of research, and so I kind of decided, hey, it's time for me to go pursue my science and technology effort. And so I told Wasatch that that's what I was going to do, go work there for the summer and then start to plan for PhD. So we lived in Salt Lake City, and I got up early in the morning to commute down to Provo to Novell's corporate headquarters. The work I did that summer was very interesting. I did mathematical modeling of electronic traffic over networks. I analyzed data to help Novell improve the network operating system performance. It was interesting, but I learned a couple of things that summer. First, I learned I never wanted to work in corporate America. My boss was really entrepreneurial, fortunately, but I learned about the bureaucracy of big companies really fast, and it was just super foreign to the environment I had worked in at Wasatch. And so I was very uncomfortable in it. The other thing I learned is how much I missed my old job. I was content and grateful to drive to Provo every day to work at Novell, but I didn't have the level of excitement for my job that I had at Wasatch. As I was contemplating heading off to PhD in science, it just didn't feel right. And then one morning driving down to Provo, it hit me like a ton of bricks that I should just go back to Wasatch and make a career out of stock picking. And so the minute I got to work that day, I called Susie and I told her, I'm not going to graduate school. I'm not, at least to get a PhD in science, and I'm not going to pursue a science career, and I'm just going to go back to Wasatch if they'll take me back. And so that night I called Sam, my boss, and asked him if he'd take me back. And I remember the conversation started out with a big laugh, and he took me back. It was quite amazing, though, because in 1990 when I went back, those were also kind of a tough, difficult time for Wasatch. The NASDAQ was down 20% that year, and Wasatch had been through kind of a tough performance period, and their assets, they had lost their 3 largest clients, and their assets had gone from something like $250 million under management down to 80. And so their business went down in a third. And so it was a tough market, and business was tough, but Sam still took me back, which I'm very grateful for. It was not an easy thing for me to kind of tell my parents, because they had their heart set on me being like a scientist or a doctor, not kind of a money-grubbing finance guy. And so that was hard, but I just knew it was the right thing. Now, I want to tell you my pay, though. I didn't ask an offer or anything. I just knew I wanted to go back and do this for a career. And times were pretty tough for Wasatch. And I had another colleague, Carrie Barker. She had agreed on having a $10,000 base salary, and she had $30,000 bonus if she massively beat the market in her stocks. And if she didn't beat at all in her stock, there was 0 bonus. And you guys, inflation has not grown that much since then, and that's not a lot of money. And I had a wife and a little baby, and so I went back to Sam and I said, hey, would it be possible I could get a $15,000 base? And so if anybody's wondering, that's what I started for, $15,000 base. $30,000. If my stocks didn't do well, I got zero bonus. So it was pretty lean. But Carrie and I, we did one really smart thing, and we said, great, we'll do that, but can we tie our pay to the growth of the firm? And everybody agreed to do that, and Sam agreed to do that. And so we just took the attitude like, we're going to grow this firm. We're not making enough to live on. That was not enough to live on. But we just said, it doesn't matter. We like this firm. We think we can grow. And so that's how we did it. I'm going to just pause here, and I've talked all about me, and now I just want to talk a little bit more to you. My success kind of came in an old school fashion. I'm not one of these brilliant entrepreneurs that dropped out of college and started up a company that took over the world. Nor was I one of these high IQ geniuses. Listed on this slide I've got up here are the things that were important to me. I got a good education. In college, I majored in math and physics. I got a minor in French and chemistry. I took it really seriously, and I got very good grades. I graduated Magna Cum Laude. That was not easy. Susie can tell you I was up a lot of nights, trying to figure a single physics problem out that was difficult. Even in high school, I worked really pretty hard. I was never good at English. I was terrible at English, and those were always my worst grades, but I took hard classes. I took the AP English thing, and barely passed. I did pass it, to get college credit, but it really helped me articulating. Even though I don't sound like it now, it helped me in articulating myself, and so it later helped me in my job. So I just wanted, education was important to me, and I worked hard at it. But it wasn't everything. I got a lot of experience before I graduated from college, as I've given you in detail. One of my favorite expressions, too, was the harder I work, the luckier I am. And then, I was passionate about what I did. When I worked on this support team at Wasatch, we took pride in what we did. We were always doing something to try to make the company better and to make it an exciting place to be. So I turned 50 this year, and I'm also a grandpa this year. And if there's one thing I've learned here is that it's not about me anymore, it's about your generation. 13 years ago, I had a chance to be a Mormon bishop of a university singles ward, just an ecclesiastical leader, for those of you who aren't Mormon, working with younger people. And I fell in love with your generation and in your time of life through that calling. You're at such a great time of life. If you make good decisions now, you can set yourself up for a great life and impact the world in so many positive ways. I agreed to do this lecture because I really hoped that maybe I could say just one or two things that might help one or two of you here along the way. In the last 4.5 years since starting my own company, which I'll talk about later, I've hired 36 college and high school kids. 5 of them are now full-time with me, 12 are still part-time with me, and 19 have gone on to do other great things and have a solid experience in other companies. For people that want to work in my company, I think the things on this slide are important. Education is important. There's no question those that worked harder on their education are more prepared to succeed than those that didn't. Further, the academic pursuit of trying to figure the world out and trying to be right for the right reasons, trying to be intellectually honest, is something we highly value in our company. Experience is also so valuable too. Every single one of the kids that have come through my company have said things like, I learned more here working for you in the real world than I have in all of the classes I've taken in college combined. I've had kids pass through who think that grade point is everything that matters, and I find them too one-dimensional. Those that have gone out and gotten their hands dirty and maybe sacrificed the perfect grades to get a real-life experience are far ahead, is my feeling. Just as an aside, I wouldn't go out and get the highest paying job you can find. Some of you might have to because of your situation just to pay for college. But for those of you who are able or have help, go out and get experience in the area of your interest. Don't go back and sell alarm systems back east and make big bucks over the summer, unless you want to be a salesman. Rather, find a job in your field of study and go work for free if you have to. The ROI, which is what we talk about, return on investment, will be greater in the long run. It will give you vitally needed experience and lead to networking opportunities that, like for me, may make your whole career. Or at the very least, it will help you figure out what you don't want to do, and you can check it off, kind of like I did at Novell. You're the millennial generation, and you have so much potential, but perhaps you have less motivation. My dad, who I had hoped would come, but he was unable to make it, he grew up as a child of the Depression. He spent his lifetime of work trying to ensure that his kids had more than he had, and didn't want his kids to go through what he did growing up. I stand on his shoulders and have been able to give even more perhaps to my kids. My kids can accomplish so much more than I have, like you can from your parents with what you've been given. But do you have the motivation? Will my kids have the work ethic and passion to make a difference out there? Will the fact that they have so much more make them vulnerable to not having work ethic and not having passion for their job? I am super optimistic as ever that my kids will achieve greater heights than me and truly stand for something out there in the world. And my message to each of you would be to reach high, go accomplish something great, and stand for something. The last words on my slide here are about associating with good people. So up here on the far right is my boss when I was in high school. Her name's Cindy Firestone. She still works at Wasatch. She is the most honest, wonderful person you could ever meet. One time in high school, I literally fell asleep on the job. I was doing paperwork and I was so tired from studying that I fell asleep, and I think I was snoring. She was really gentle in how she dealt with that, but she let me know that she expected more from me when I came to work, and just a wonderful person. Sam Stewart was just a great entrepreneur, starting Wasatch, and opened up his firm to kids like me. Not only that, but he gave away stock to 30, 40, 50 people in the firm for nothing. And over the years, it was a great blessing to all of us. My advice to you is go find a way to associate with these kinds of people. If you're not in this kind of situation that I lucked into, try to make the situation you're in that way. And if it's not possible, then you should consider finding a new situation where you can be in this kind of environment. So just a little bit back to Wasatch. So what Wasatch is we're an investment advisor. We're called a registered investment advisor, and we're a mutual fund company. I'm saying we, I don't work there anymore, but I worked there for 30 years, so I still think like I'm at Wasatch. But what they are not, just to kind of help you understand, is they're not a financial planning or an advisory. Financial planning or advisory help people allocate their assets and put them in places. What Wasatch funds did is once you've decided where you're going to allocate your assets, then you might use Wasatch as one of the options. And Wasatch was a pioneer in what they call small cap investing. So Wasatch didn't invest in the big companies like IBM and General Electric and General Motors and Apple and Google and Cisco, but they were focused on investing in smaller companies, trying to find the next Apple, find the next Google. And this was their process. So it was just trying to find a great management team in it's what I call common sense investing. Find a really great small company with these kinds of attributes, a great management team with good corporate governance, a solid business model, a sustainable competitive advantage, and headroom to grow. And then we would try to be the first ones to find them. And that's what they called ABGC, America's Best Growth Companies. And later they started calling it WBGC, so the World's Best Growth Companies. So they started out investing in the U.S. and then moved internationally. in the interest of time, I'm doing a little fishing theme here tonight, but so I spent the rest of my time at Wasatch learning how to be a good stock picker, and it's a little bit like fishing. When you're trying to find a good fishing hole, you kind of want to go where there are fish, a lot of good fish, but where other people aren't fishing as well. And what we became good at Wasatch was finding these great little companies in places where other people weren't looking, that had those characteristics I mentioned of being great businesses with good business models, good growth opportunities, competitive advantage, and trying to find them before everybody else. And so if you go to a place where the game warden's stocking the lake well and nobody else is fishing there, then that's a pretty good combination to find fish. And so that's how I spent my career at Wasatch to start out. And I spent really 10 years being an apprentice, learning how to do that. So it wasn't like an overnight experience. Some of the kids earlier at the dinner, asked about how I got good at this, and it came up, that book about the 10,000 hours of experience that you need to have to be good. I spent a long time working hard to be a good stock picker for nearly 10 years before I really got my chance to be a portfolio manager. So here's another mentor that I had. Jeff Carden just retired from Wasatch as their CEO. Jeff Carden was a brilliant investor. Jeff's hero, was a guy named Peter Lynch, who was a friend of Warren Buffett. For those of you that know Fidelity, you can't, if you really know Fidelity was really put on the map by a person named Peter Lynch, who ran the Fidelity Magellan Fund. And when I was your age, he was kind of like the Warren Buffett. Everybody was talking about him and how he did. Peter Lynch was Jeff's hero, and Jeff was my hero. So I kind of consider myself as a Peter Lynch disciple as well. Anybody interested in my profession, I have them read the book One Up on Wall Street, which is a book that Peter Lynch wrote. Jeff and Sam, the founder of Wasatch, and Jeff, if you go back and look at the most successful funds in the last 40 years in small cap growth space, if you looked at their track records over the past years, they would be among the top 10 small cap funds in America in terms of being top of the charts. Jeff and Sam treated me as peers. And we had a great collegial environment. Sam never told me once what to do. He just asked the question of all of us, what should we do together? Jeff was also an amazing partner who just had an innate ability to spot a great company that would be a lot bigger someday and avoid the fake growers that would be shooting stars. Whatever profession any of you choose, it's vital that you find whoever is the best in your industry, and then you learn as much as you can from them. I was super fortunate to have guys like Jeff and Sam, who are really great investors, right next to me. But even if I didn't have them, I could have read up on Peter Lynch at Fidelity and read through his books and such. So one of my pieces of advice for you is whatever profession you pick, find those leaders of that industry who are the very best and learn from them. In the interest of time, I'm going to move a little faster through this. So after 10 years of kind of being an apprentice, I was really fortunate to get my shot at running my own fund. And Wasatch launched a microcap fund on June 19th of 1995. It was just a few days after we had our third baby. And it was quite a stressful time. Susie can remember, having a baby, and I was kind of distant trying to get ready for this fund. I had a goal when I launched this fund as just a kid that 10 years later, it would be one of the top 25 funds in America. And I sort of let everybody know that that was my goal to do that. And some of my colleagues that were older just thought, who's this young kid? He's crazy. He can't do that. I mean, that wouldn't be possible. Over the next 10 years, we worked super hard, and I had a great team, and I had those other peers, Jeff, Sam, and Carrie, and anytime I was investing in there, I would go to them to get their help, and we had a great young team of analysts to help me. Through that 10-year period, one of the periods was through the dot-com bubble bust. I don't know how many of you have studied, the financial history, but in the years 2000 and 2001, the market came unwound. In the late 90s, the market went way up on the thought that the internet was going to take everything over, which it kind of has, but it didn't happen that fast. It took another decade or two to where we are today. But what happened is the markets kind of unwound, and our peers were down 20-30% over those years, and Wasatch really sailed right through it and became one of the top managers in the country over that time period. And so when we hit the 10-year mark on June 19th of 2005, not only was the microcap fund in the top 25 of all funds, but it was actually the #1 fund in all of the funds of America, every single fund. I put the Wall Street Journal, I look pretty good in that photo, I look a lot older now, but it was super fun to obviously get the publicity and so on, but it was a lot more fun even to have done that well for our clients, and it was really a team effort. Being a portfolio manager and analyst in my profession is exciting. You can kind of be a little bit of a rock star at times. There was never a dull moment. Something's always happening that's relevant to the market. It is a little bit like being a baseball player, though. You go through slumps, and everybody knows the score. Today, you can look up my fund and see how much it was up or down, if I had a good day or not. This week, this month. This last year was kind of an average year for us, and just like baseball or basketball players, people look at us and say, oh, you're only kind of as good as your last game or your last time period. So it can be a stressful kind of a thing. And so what happened for me is I started to get a little bit burned out on what I was doing, and Sam always told me, hey, Robert, pace yourself. And the other thing I always said is the perfect is the enemy of the good. And I never listened to him. And I tried to just do everything perfectly. And I got burned out. And then in 2006, I just went to Sam and said, look, I want to do something else. I'm tired of this. And Wasatch had gotten bigger and a little bit more complex. And so I was worn out and ready to quit Wasatch. Sam talked me into kind of sticking around as a director of research for a while. And one of the questions the team here, the entrepreneur team, asked me is, what mistakes did you make? And one of the things that I took on after getting off the fund was to try to manage our research department. And Wasatch by this time had been very successful and had gone from just, a dozen, 5, 6, 7, 8 employees to 80 to 100. And a lot of the ideas I had as director of research didn't really pan out. And the team didn't want to head in a different direction. And I kind of consider it one of the failures of my career was that I just didn't have the energy and the leadership to kind of carry that team. And so I told Wasatch in 2007 that I was going to leave the firm. And I actually sold back my stock, which at that time was about 15% of the company. And so I decided to leave. Something happened though then, the global financial crisis hit. And I had sold my stock, but I hadn't yet left. And what happened was I didn't feel like I could leave Wasatch at that time because they needed my help. Just like when I joined Wasatch, in that period, their business went down in a third because they had gone through kind of a tough performance period, and then the market and the global financial markets crashed. And so they were on their back and in trouble. And so for a time, I stayed there to help them rejuvenate the firm. And the thing that I did do at that time was I got back on the front lines and I took a white piece of paper and said, what kind of fund do I want to manage? And by this time, Wasatch had gotten heavily back into going to the globe and investing in companies across the globe. And I decided I didn't want to just be a microcap guy anymore either, which was the fund I was running, but I wanted to invest in companies as they got bigger and bigger from microcap. And so I started a fund at Wasatch in November of 2008 at the very bottom of the global financial crisis called the Wasatch Global Opportunities Fund. And what it was investing anywhere across the world, and we'd find them as microcap and small cap, and then they'd grow to be mid cap and big cap, and we would hang on to them. So I stuck around, but the one thing that I told Wasatch was, hey, I still want to leave and go someday and do my own thing. I had just kind of gotten burned out on a bigger company. So my time at Wasatch spanned 30 years. And that's a chart of their growth. You can't really see the wiggles or the ups and downs, but you can see the financial crisis, how it went from 10 billion down to 4, and it even got lower. You can see that they've recovered super nicely and well. And so after getting this new fund up in 2008, in 2011, I left. I came to Wasatch again and said, hey, it's time for me to go and kind of do my own thing. So I spent 30 years at Wasatch, kind of 3 in high school, left for 2 years to France on a Mormon mission, about 10 years as an apprentice, and then about 15 years kind of helping them carry the firm on the back, being a portfolio manager. Tyler, stand up. Everybody boo him because he's a University of Utah guy, not Utah State. Tyler works for me now. He's a student at the University of Utah. Tyler was, I think, valedictorian at Highland High School, super good student, and we latched onto him. He's a finance major at the U, and he's working for me. For as proud as I am to have left and be able to carry the title of entrepreneur and CEO and co-founder, you know, I'm really more proud of just being a high school kid and a college kid and working 30 years at a firm and trying to make a difference and be an entrepreneur in that environment. Does the world need new entrepreneurs and to start up really good companies? For sure it does. But does the world need just as much really great kids, great people to make a difference and, you know, kind of lift where they stand and do something really great just where they are? Mike and Mary, I want Tyler to work at Grandeur Peak for the next 30 years. I know he has the entrepreneurial gene because I know like Mary and Mike started the frozen yogurt company, but I want Tyler to be empowered and feel like he can make a great difference at my firm. He sits right next to me right there, and so I thought I'd show you that. I think, everybody wants to start up a company, but, I think the path to it is, do great where you are. I'm just going to wing it now because I'm running out of time. I left in 2011 and started up a firm with 2 great guys. Blake Walker on the left is a young guy at Wasatch who came with me. The unique thing about Blake was he was a young guy that came to me, and when I wanted to leave, instead of like cheering because, hey, he got one guy out of his way to climb up the ladder, he said, oh, Robert, I want to work with you. You're really good, and don't leave. I mean, he essentially said, hey, I'll carry your bags, and you can run the fund, and I'll be your analyst, and I'll work for you. And so he was a super loyal guy to a guy up in front of him. And I credit Blake really to giving me a second career when I was burned out. Here was a young guy, he's 11 years younger than me, and he just stood up and said, you're a great investor, you shouldn't quit now. We can do a lot more great things, and really carried me along. That's Eric Huffner, who had the paper outs with me, and he was my best friend in high school. This is on top of Grandeur Peak. It's a really meaningful name for us. It's a peak in the Wasatch Mountains, so we came from Wasatch, so it's kind of cool. The Grandeur Peak's there. It's in the Salt Lake Valley. It has a name kind of tied to our heritage. You know, we're Utah guys competing against the best on Wall Street, the Ivy League guys, and we want people to know, you know, we're just these guys out in Utah and we can beat you. And so Grandeur Peak, it also sort of gives the vision like we can invest anywhere in the world, and we're going to go to the best place looking out over the landscape. This is just my first team. We really quickly assembled a big team. Instead of just going out on the startup and just taking a couple of people and kind of doing it lightly, we really kind of went for it. I was fortunate to be able to do that because I had the capital coming from Wasatch and having worked there that long and having sold my stock back that I could fund this. And so we lost a couple $1 million starting up Grandeur Peak, but we played to win. We came right out and hired a great team. A lot of these guys were former Wasatch people. and that was on the, we climbed Grandeur Peak right before we started our funds. That's in October of 2011. And then this is today. It doesn't have the whole team there because they were in class at the U, but Tyler's not in there, for example, because I think he was taking an exam, but that's our team. So we've been a big, good success. We've grown to about $2.5 billion in 4 years. We've been able to do what Wasatch took 25 years in 2.5, and so we're growing. This is just a quick chart. If you can see, in the last 4.5 years, we've touched 6,000 companies, so 2,500 visits, everywhere from Pakistan to, Salt Lake City. All of those dots represent places that our team has visited companies. We've tried to be a really great company, and we took the whole company on 2 different weeks. Half the firm went 1 week and the other half the next week, and we overlapped on Sunday. And we went to Guatemala and had a great cultural exchange. We're trying to build a great company that can do foremost really well for our clients, and then at the same time give back to the global and local community. Why did I leave Wasatch? This is a picture of a great marathon runner, and when I was at Wasatch, for part of that time I felt like I was out in front of the pack. And then what happened was, just as the firm got big and circumstances changed and the way I wanted to do things, all of a sudden I found myself falling kind of back into the middle of the pack. And I didn't feel like I could really be my best in this bigger firm. No criticism of Wasatch. They've gone on to do great things and be great. But sometimes for some of us who are more comfortable in something smaller and something a little different, there came a time after 30 years to kind of change that. And so luckily I found 2 friends, and the 3 of us are back out in front of the pack again. And we got a great team, and we're spending a lot of time on being a really solid team, having a really good process, and just trying to do our very best for our clients. I can't finish but say this little thing about my wife, Susie. What would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? When I was at Wasatch, I was contemplating leaving, and I just didn't really know if I should leave or not. And Susie gave me this and kind of said, hey, you ought to go for it. I'm 100% behind you. I've already told you how hard it is to work for somebody that works in the stock market, and then on top of that, to work for somebody on top of that who's starting up a company, an entrepreneur. It's a lot for a spouse or a friend to put up with. But the great thing is I had a lot of inspiration and a lot of support from Susie. And so I just wanted to point that out, that, if you've got good people around you that can help you, inspire you, your parents, your spouse, and others. Susie gave me these quotes from Walt Disney. He inspired me too. If you can dream it, you can do it. I do not like to repeat successes. I like to go on to other things. It's kind of fun to do the impossible. When you're curious, you find lots of interesting things to do. You reach a point where you don't work for money. Somehow I can't believe there are any heights that can't be scaled by a man who knows the secret of making dreams come true. This special secret, seems to me, can be summarized in the 4 C's. They are curiosity, confidence, courage, and constancy. And the greatest of these is confidence. When you believe a thing, believe it all the way, implicitly and unquestionably. The first one, all of our dreams can come true if we have the courage to pursue them. Susie gave me these quotes, and it was super inspiring. Just, hey, Walt Disney, at the same time we went to Disney World, and it's amazing. He's created like another planet there that's totally this world outside of this world. And it was just like, hey, I can do this, I can do it. And so we believed it, and we went and we did it. I think I'm out of time, so I need to take questions now. I have just some quotes from Sam and a few other entrepreneurs. My brothers, John started a real estate development company, if anybody wants a question about that, and I've been a partner involved in that. My little brother, David, started up a veterinary lab, and he had some quotes. I've run out. My brother-in-law, Will West, has started up some tech companies, including one that went public, Control 4. And a friend, Mark Boyden, started up some other things. But I had some great quotes here, but time I've gone too long. So I think now Clint, do I need to take some questions, don't I?
Does this work? All right. Okay, so we got some tweets in, and Jed and Emily, this is the first question, would like to know, you travel the globe, you research these companies, how do you evaluate and decide to invest in these companies domestically and internationally?
Okay, so, can you hear me okay? Yeah, what we're trying to do is, I just call it common sense investing. What we do is we screen the world. It turns out all the companies' financials that are listed companies, they get posted, there's databases that collect all this information, and we can screen it. So we screen the world and look for those best companies, and then we go out and try to touch them. And what we're just truly trying to find is a really good company that's small, that's going to get big. And we're trying to find it before everybody else. And we can find them in a lot of different places. Okay.
Yeah. And then I had a question. What is your all-time favorite stock pick?
Okay. My all-time favorite stock pick is O'Reilly Automotive. You would all recognize it now, probably because they've come to Utah. I was just a little green analyst in 1992, I think, and they had just come public, and I was going out to St. Louis to see, on business for other reasons, to see other companies. And I ran a screen of Missouri. And down in the southwest corner of Missouri was this little company that showed up with good numbers named O'Reilly Automotive. I couldn't see them during the week because I was up in St. Louis, but I called the CEO and I said, hey, would you be willing to meet me on Saturday? And I drove down there, and I can still see his Porsche sitting in the parking lot on Saturday. And he met with me, and I heard his story about their expansion plans, about how they were differentiated from AutoZone, and about what they wanted to accomplish. And I really found a CEO that I could believe in and thought was really good. And we did a lot more research on it. We bought a little bit, and they actually missed their earnings on the first, right after I bought it. They had kind of a hiccup in a distribution center, but I stuck with it. And it was a little 200 million market cap company then, and I think it's a 20 billion market cap company today. And they've just expanded across the country. It's a great business because it's super recession resistant. When when times get tough, people keep their cars running, and that means they've got to get more auto parts. So that's probably my favorite.
Very cool. The last question, is there a way, or do you apply what you learned in your physics courses? Do you apply physics courses to investing in any way?
I imagine that having had some physics, that it helps in some of the investments. I remember looking at a superconductor company once, and I know what superconductivity is from doing a little bit of that in my coursework. The reality of my degree is that, not really in the way that you're kind of asking. I don't really, but in the way that I would tell you is that physics was very rigorous, and it taught me how to think. Physics and math really taught me how to think and think logically. and how to process things. And that for sure has made all the difference in the world. In our business, it's sort of about science and art and being disciplined. Warren Buffett has some kind of quote, or his partner Charlie Munger, to the effect of, we don't have to be smarter than the others, we just have to be more disciplined than the others. And he was big on the idea that what he wanted in people that picked stocks was not really high IQ, but people with the right disposition and the right thinking. And I think that a physics and a math degree were super helpful to me to be disciplined and logical. And so that's how it helped me, as opposed to, I know quantum mechanics or the theory of relativity or something.
Cool. That's the last question. On behalf of the Clark Center, we have a gift. It's actually in your podium, tucked away for you. But yeah, thank you so much from the Clark Center.
Thanks.